Picture this. You take your mistress to an upscale restaurant for a romantic evening, only to look up and realize your server is your wife. Not crying, not screaming, just working. Professionally. Perfectly. And suddenly, you're the one who can't breathe. Before we dive in, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. I trust you have done that. Now, let's begin. Martin's Woodwork stood at the glass wall of his downtown office, watching the city stretch beneath him like a signed contract. The skyline sparkled with late afternoon light, towers rising sharp and proud, just like the deals he closed weekly. Phones hummed, keyboards clattered. His name sat on the door in brushed steel letters. To anyone looking in, this was victory. To him, lately, it had started to feel like expensive wallpaper. His reflection stared back. Tailored navy suit, silk tie hair precisely combed, the kind of grooming that said, "I matter." He looked nothing like the kid who once measured baseboard trim in his father's cramped carpentry shop. He'd become exactly what he'd aimed for. A man who moved properties with a handshake, who shifted markets with a phone call. But beneath the polish, something kept restless stirred. Behind him, his assistant knocked lightly on the doorframe. "Mr. Woodwork, the Riverside contract needs your signature by 5. Martins waved a hand without turning. "Leave it. I'll handle it later." "Sir, they're waiting on—" "I said later." The assistant retreated. Martins loosened his collar and sank into his leather chair. His desk was pristine, except for his phone, which buzzed insistently. He didn't need to check the name to know who it was. Josephine. The screen lit up with her photo. Smooth skin, full lips, eyes that promised escape. He swiped quickly. "You're late," her voice purred through the speaker. "I'm working," Martins replied, though his tone softened immediately. "You're not working," she countered. "You're staring out that window again, pretending the city isn't boring you to death." Martins chuckled despite himself. "Maybe." "Then let me fix that." Her voice dropped lower, intimate. "I found something perfect. Lambros, that French place everyone's been talking about. Corner table, low lighting, wine that costs more than most people's rent. Just us, no interruptions, no responsibilities." Martins leaned back, closing his eyes. He could already taste it. The wine, the freedom. Josephine's laughter under soft jazz. "What about—" He stopped mid-sentence. He couldn't finish Diana's name. Josephine's laugh was sharp and knowing. "Your wife? She's probably at home sorting bills or folding towels. She won't even notice you're gone. Besides, don't you deserve a little excitement? All work and no play makes Martins very, very dull." The silence stretched. Martins tapped his pen against the desk. He should have said no. He should have remembered vows and promises, and the woman who believed in him when his name wasn't on any door. But instead, he whispered, "Book it." Josephine's laugh bubbled through the line like champagne uncorked. "I knew you'd say yes." Martins ended the call, palm damp against the phone. He sat still for a long moment, the office clock ticking like a countdown. Finally, he rose and walked back to the window. The city roared beneath him, restless and alive. Somewhere in that sprawl of noise and light was Diana, his wife, the woman who had stood beside him when this skyline was only a fantasy. She had been enough once. But now, Martins told himself, he needed fire. He needed something that felt like winning again. and in Josephine's arms, he thought he'd found both. Yet deep inside, something whispered, "The bill always comes due." The apartment still smelled of lavender and lemon cleaner. Diana Woodwork folded warm laundry with practiced hands, the rhythm soothing and automatic. Shirts, slacks, kitchen towels, she stacked them neatly into piles on the dining table. Outside, traffic hummed faintly, a reminder of the city where her husband built empires while she held the home together. She moved slowly, humming an old melody her father used to play on the radio during Sunday dinners. Her fingers lingered on one shirt, Martin's white Oxford, the one he wore to close his first major deal. She pressed it gently, remembering when she'd ironed the collar for him that morning, whispering, "You've got this." "What if I don't?" he'd said, nervous, clutching his briefcase. "You will," she'd answered, smoothing the fabric. And she'd been right. But success had come with distance. His late nights grew longer. His laughter grew shorter. His eyes, when they met hers, always seemed to be looking past her towards something else. She was never accused. That wasn't her way. She carried his home, his mother's care, his silence, his absences. She folded them all into the life she managed alone. Her phone buzzed on the counter, a message from her mentor. "Congratulations again, Evelyn. The team at Lambros is lucky to have you shadowing this week. You're going to be an incredible restaurateur." Diana's lips curved faintly. Few people knew about her hidden life. Between grocery runs and family dinners, she had taken night classes in hospitality management, small business finance, and floor operations. While Martin's expanded his empire, she had quietly been building one of her own. An expertise in service, in grace under pressure, in running a dining room like a symphony. She opened the desk drawer and pulled out a small black folder. Inside lay her hospitality certification and a letter of recommendation from Lambros's owner. She traced the embossed logo, remembering the nights she had studied by lamplight while Martins slept. The early mornings, she'd tested recipes in the kitchen before he woke. Her father's voice echoed in memory. "A woman who serves isn't small, Diana. She's the one who decides what gets placed on the table." A soft knock came at the door. Martin's mother shuffled in slowly with her cane, smiling warmly. "Diana, child, you work too hard. Come sit and rest." Diana smiled and guided her gently to a chair. "I'm fine, Mama Woodwork." The older woman's eyes softened. "You remind me of your father. Steady, never rushing, never loud. Martins doesn't know how lucky he is." Diana's throat tightened, but she only nodded. She tucked the folder back into the drawer and returned to folding. Her sacrifices had been quiet, unseen, unspoken, but her future wasn't gone. It was waiting, steady as a heartbeat, sharp as a knife being sharpened in the dark. Josephine Lopez scrolled through reservation confirmations on her tablet, sipping iced espresso in her sun-drenched loft. Light spilled across marble floors and designer bags scattered like trophies. She smirked at the photos of Lambros, velvet booths, gold fixtures, a wine list that read like poetry. She wanted it all, and Martin's credit card made it possible. When Martins arrived that evening, tie loosened and jacket slung over his shoulder, Josephine greeted him in silk. She draped herself across the sofa, pouting dramatically. "You look exhausted, Martins. You need a break." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Work never stops. That's why I planned something." She turned the tablet toward him, her eyes sparkling. "Look, Lambros, 7:30 reservation. Corner table. The kind of place where they remember your name and never your secrets. Martins hesitated. It's risky. Josephine laughed, sliding closer until her perfume wrapped around him like a dare. Diana doesn't even know where Lambrose is. You think she's going to magically appear? Come on, live a little. She placed the tablet in his hands, her manicured fingers brushing his wrist. Say yes? He swallowed. Yes, Josephine squealed, clapping her hands together. She kissed him deeply, triumphant. In her mind, this wasn't just dinner. It was proof she could pull him fully into her world, proof that she was the exciting choice, the glamorous choice, the right choice. She imagined candlelit photos, wine-stained lips, the thrill of being wanted in public. Diana was a ghost in the background, irrelevant and invisible. What Josephine didn't know was that Diana's world wasn't the background. It was the stage itself, and Josephine was about to walk straight into the spotlight. Lambrose hummed with the low murmur of money and manners. Pendant lights cast golden halos over white tablecloths. Jazz drifted softly from hidden speakers. Crystal clinked. Laughter rose and fell like tides. The dining room smelled of garlic, butter, and ambition. Martins adjusted his cufflinks as he followed the maitre d' toward the corner table, Josephine's hand light on his arm. She wore midnight blue, a dress that turned heads without asking permission. Martins scanned the room nervously, his heart thumping at every passing server, every flash of movement. But Diana was nowhere in sight. At least, not yet. Relax, Josephine whispered, sliding into the booth. You look guilty already. I'm just warm, Martins muttered, tugging at his collar. Josephine rolled her eyes and reached for the wine list. This is paradise, Martins. Forget her. Forget everything. Martins forced a smile. He told himself this was his reward, that he'd earned this escape, this thrill, this moment of feeling alive again. But guilt scratched at the edges of his mind like claws on glass. Across the dining room, behind the swinging kitchen doors, Diana Woodwork adjusted her black apron and checked her reflection in the stainless steel fridge. Her hair was pinned neatly. Her name tag sat straight. Her hands were steady. She had arrived an hour before service, slipping through the back entrance like she had for weeks. The staff knew her. The owner trusted her. Tonight, she was covering Section B. The corner tables, the high-maintenance guests, the ones who tipped well or complained loudly. The floor captain had handed her the section list without hesitation. Can you float tonight, Evelyn? We're short-staffed. I can, she'd said. And she could. Now, standing in the quiet moment before the rush, Diana glanced at the seating chart. Table 6, corner booth, 2 guests, Woodwork, M, party of 2. Her heart clenched, but her expression stayed calm. She breathed in slowly, exhaled through her nose, and straightened her spine. The maitre d' poked his head into the prep station. Evelyn, your section's filling up. Ready? Diana picked up the wine tray, 2 Bordeaux glasses gleaming like evidence under the light. Ready? She said. And as she stepped into the dining room, the pendant lights seemed to brighten and chill all at once, like the moment before a storm, when the air goes sharp and the sky holds its breath. Diana's shoes made no sound as she crossed the dining room, the weight of the wine tray perfectly balanced in her left hand. Years of practice had taught her how to move through chaos without disturbing it. She'd learned that in her father's restaurant, long before Martins ever knew her name. 6 months earlier, she'd sat in a cramped classroom above a bakery, taking notes while an instructor drew floor plans on a whiteboard. A dining room is an ecosystem, the woman had said. The server who controls the rhythm controls the room. Diana had underlined that sentence twice. She reached table 6 and set down the first glass with practiced precision. Martins looked up mid-sentence, his smile freezing like a photograph caught in the wrong light. His eyes traveled from the wine glass to her hands to the name tag on her apron. His face went white. "Good evening," Diana said, her voice steady and professional. "I'm Evelyn, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. May I pour?" Josephine glanced between them, confusion flickering across her features. Martins's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Diana tipped the bottle, the Bordeaux catching the candlelight as it spiraled into the glass. She poured to exactly the right level, not a drop more, not a millimeter less. Then she turned to Josephine with a small, genuine smile. "The Saint-Emilion is an excellent choice. You have wonderful taste." Josephine blinked, caught off guard by the kindness. "Thank you," she said slowly, her voice uncertain. Diana moved to the next table before Martins could find his tongue. 3 months ago, Diana had met with Lambrose's owner in the quiet hour between lunch and dinner service. "I want to learn everything," she'd said, her hands folded in her lap. The owner, a silver-haired woman named Colette, had studied her for a long moment. "Why hospitality?" she'd asked. Diana's answer had been simple. "Because my father taught me that feeding people is the most honest power there is." At table 8, a woman with shellfish allergies was growing anxious. Diana knelt beside her chair, eye level, listening intently. Within 2 minutes, she'd relayed the modification to the kitchen, suggested an alternative starter, and returned with the chef's personal assurance written on a small card. From across the room, the health inspector, a quiet man in a gray suit nursing an espresso, made a note in his pad. Colette, observing from the bar, nodded with approval. Josephine watched Diana move through the section like water finding its level, efficient, graceful, unstoppable. She'd imagined Martin's wife as small, tired, resentful, a woman who'd let herself disappear. But this woman wasn't disappearing. She was present in a way that made the whole room orient around her. Staff deferred to her instinctively. Guests smiled when she approached. Even the lighting seemed kinder where she stood. Josephine's champagne suddenly tasted metallic. The fantasy she'd been building, of rescuing Martins from a passionless marriage, of being chosen over obligation, crumbled into something cheap and obvious. She wasn't the heroine. She was the cliché. Late nights, Martins had told her, strategy sessions, investor dinners that ran until midnight. Josephine had believed him because she'd wanted to. Now, watching his trembling hands and darting eyes, she wondered how many of those late nights had been lies, and how many women before her had sat in midnight blue dresses, believing they were special. Martins caught the maitre d's eye and gestured urgently. The man approached with practiced calm. "Is there a problem, Mr. Woodwork?" "The server," Martins hissed, his voice low and desperate. "Can we have someone else? For privacy reasons." The maitre d's expression remained perfectly neutral. "I'm afraid Evelyn is our most capable server tonight, sir. She's handling a complex section. I wouldn't want to disrupt her flow. Or yours." It wasn't a refusal. It was a verdict. Martins sank back into his seat. 2 tables over, a woman in tortoiseshell glasses typed rapidly on her phone, her dinner companion leaning in with raised eyebrows. Near the window, a couple in elegant attire, marked by donor pins from the city's Food Security Coalition, observed the quiet drama with keen interest. The blogger's post went live at 8:47 p.m. "Spotted, real estate player MW At Lambros, with a companion who is decidedly not Mrs. W. or plot twist, Mrs. W. is literally serving them wine. This is better than theater. And a drama in the dining room. Whispers began to ripple like wind through grass. Diana returned to table 6 to clear the appetizer plates. Her hands moved with choreographed efficiency, never rattling a fork, never disturbing the silence that had settled over Martins and Josephine like frost. As she lifted the last plate, Martins reached for her wrist. "Diana." She stepped back smoothly, the movement so subtle it looked like service, not evasion. "Is there anything else I can bring you this evening?" Her voice held no anger, no tears, just a question that somehow made him feel smaller than any accusation could have. Before he could answer, Colette appeared at Diana's elbow, her smile warm and conspiratorial. "Evelyn, darling, when you have a moment, the Harringtons at table 12 want to hear about your Tuesday supper concept. Would you mind saying a few words during dessert service?" Diana's heart leapt, but her face remained composed. "Of course." Colette squeezed her shoulder and glided away. Across the table, Martins reached into his jacket pocket, fingers closing around a small velvet box he'd brought as a grand gesture. A key card and lease agreement for a penthouse he'd been planning to offer Josephine between the chocolate soufflé and the cognac. His plan had been to double down, to prove his commitment with something tangible and expensive. Now, as Diana walked toward the kitchen with her tray balanced perfectly and her spine straight, he realized he was about to make his play at the exact moment his wife was being invited to make hers. And for the first time in years, Martins understood what it felt like to be outmaneuvered. Martins pulled the velvet box from his jacket with hands that wouldn't steady. The dining room buzzed softly around them, silver on china, murmured conversations, the gentle clink of crystal. He slid the box across the white tablecloth toward Josephine like a chess piece. "Open it," he said, forcing confidence into his voice. Josephine's fingers trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside, nestled against black silk, wasn't a ring. It was a key card, sleek, metallic, expensive, and beneath it, a folded document with an address embossed in gold. "Penthouse lease," Martins said quickly, leaning forward. "Downtown, 23rd floor. Views of the whole city. I signed it this morning." He paused, searching her face. "It's in my name, but it's for you. For us. A place where we don't have to hide." Josephine stared at the key card. The metal caught the candlelight, glinting like a coin at the bottom of a well. She understood what he wasn't saying. Not marriage, not partnership, an arrangement. A kept woman in a kept apartment. The ceiling of her role had never been clearer. "Martins," her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. "We can start fresh," he pressed, misreading her hesitation. "No more sneaking around, no more—" "Excuse me, everyone?" Colette's voice cut through the room with gentle authority. "If I could have your attention for just a moment." The dining room quieted. Servers paused mid-pour. Guests turned toward the center of the room where Colette stood beside Diana, one hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "We have something special tonight," Colette continued. "One of our team members has been developing an extraordinary community initiative, and I've asked her to share it with you. Evelyn?" Diana stepped forward, her server's apron still tied at her waist, order pad tucked in the pocket. She didn't look at table 6. She looked at the room, at the donors, the inspector, the curious faces turned toward her, and she began to speak. "Thank you, Colette. I won't take much of your time." Her voice was steady, clear, practiced. "I'm working on something called the Tuesday Supper Club. The concept is simple. Three-course menus built from surplus produce that would otherwise go to waste. Sliding scale tickets. Pay what you can, from $5 to $50. No one turned away. The inspector set down his espresso cup. The donors leaned forward. "But it's more than meals," Diana continued, pulling a small notebook from her apron. "Each dinner includes child-care vouchers for single parents and on-site job training workshops, basic hospitality skills, food handling certification, resume building. The goal is to feed people and open doors." She cited numbers with quiet precision. Projected costs, partnership possibilities with local farms, potential impact metrics. No drama, no appeal to pity, just competence wrapped in compassion. "Lambros has agreed to let me pilot the program in their back room," she finished. "We're hoping to launch in 6 weeks." The room held its breath for a moment. Then applause began, soft at first, then spreading like ripples across water. The donors nodded to each other. Staff smiled. Even the kitchen crew had gathered at the service window to listen. At table 6, Josephine stared at the key card in her hand. Then at the woman standing in the center of the room. 2 proposals. 2 visions of a future. Martin's was offering her a gilded cage, a penthouse where she'd wait for him to visit, to remember her, to need her. Diana was offering strangers dignity, opportunity, and a seat at a table where they'd never been welcome. One was possession, the other was purpose. Josephine closed the velvet box with a soft click and slid it back across the table. "I can't," she whispered. Martin's face drained of color. "What? This isn't what I want," her voice cracked. "I thought it was, but it's not." The health inspector stood, clearing his throat. The room quieted again. "I want to publicly commend Lambros," he said, his voice carrying easily. "Exemplary sanitation standards. And I have to note," he gestured toward Diana, "Section B's operations were flawless. Timing, safety protocols, guest care, textbook service." More applause. Louder this time. Diana's eyes stung, but she kept her composure, nodding her thanks. Across the room, the blogger with tortoiseshell glasses snapped a photo of Martins's stricken face. Her fingers flew across her phone screen. 30 seconds later, Martins felt his own phone buzz in his pocket. He pulled it out with shaking hands. A text from his assistant. "Sir, there's a story circulating online. You're named. What do you want me to do?" The walls began to close in. Josephine stood abruptly, her chair scraping against polished wood. Heads turned. She grabbed her clutch and met Diana's eyes across the dining room. Not with hostility, but with something raw and human. "I need air," she said quietly to Martins. Then, louder, directed at Diana. "Could I speak with you? Just for a moment. Outside." Diana hesitated, her tray still balanced in one hand. Colette touched her elbow gently. "Go. I'll cover your section." Diana set down the tray, untied her apron with deliberate care, and followed Josephine toward the door. The room watched them go, the wife and the mistress, stepping into the cool night air together. Behind them, Martin sat alone at table 6, a velvet box rejected, a story spreading, his phone buzzing like a death rattle in his palm. The dining room had become a courtroom, and the verdict was already written in the eyes of everyone watching. The alley behind Lambros glowed with string lights strung between fire escapes, casting everything in warm amber. The city's noise felt distant here, muffled traffic, distant sirens, the bass thump from a bar 2 blocks over. Diana and Josephine stood 3 feet apart, breath visible in the October air. Josephine spoke first, her voice tight. "I'm not here to fight." "I know," Diana said quietly. Josephine's hands twisted around her clutch. "I need to say something, and I need you to let me finish." She took a shaking breath. "I'm sorry. Not for existing, not for feeling what I felt, but for letting myself be used, for not asking the right questions, for believing the version of you he sold me. Small, boring, gone." Her voice cracked. "You're not any of those things." Diana's throat tightened, but she didn't look away. Josephine reached into her clutch and pulled out a hotel key card, pressing it into Diana's palm. "He gave me this earlier. For tonight. I won't be going." Diana stared at the card. Cold plastic. A room number embossed in silver, then slipped it into her pocket without a word. "I grew up invisible," Josephine continued, her eyes glistening. "Middle child, quiet neighborhood, parents who loved me but never really saw me. And then Martins showed up with his attention and his promises. And I thought, finally, someone sees me." She laughed bitterly. "But he didn't see me either. He saw convenient." Diana's voice came soft. "I spent 3 years folding his shirts and holding his mother's hand and believing that if I was steady enough, small enough, useful enough, he'd remember why he chose me." She looked up at the string lights. "I'm done being small." "You were never small," Josephine said. "I see that now." They stood in the cold silence, two women who'd been cast as rivals in a story neither of them had written. "I'm leaving tonight," Josephine said finally. "I won't be his excuse anymore. I won't be the weapon he throws at you when he's cornered." Diana nodded. "Thank you." Josephine turned to go, then paused. "That supper club? It's going to be beautiful." She walked toward the street, heels clicking against wet pavement, and disappeared into the glow of the city. Diana stood alone for a moment, breathing the cold air deep into her lungs. Then she straightened her spine and went back inside. Inside, chaos was unfolding in slow motion. Martins had cornered the blogger at her table, his voice low and threatening. "How much? Name your price. That post comes down. Now." The blogger's companion bristled. "You can't. I can do whatever I want," Martins hissed. "I have lawyers who'll bury you in paperwork for a year." The health inspector's head turned sharply. His pen paused over his notepad. Martin's phone rang. He answered it too loudly, pacing near the bar. "I don't care what's trending." "Shut it down. Issue a statement. Say it's a misunderstanding. Photoshopped. Something." Diners stared. Servers froze mid-step. The jazz seemed to dim under the weight of his unraveling. When Diana returned to the server station to retrieve her tray, Martins was suddenly there, blocking her path. His cologne was sharp with sweat. "Diana, please, we need to talk. As husband and wife, privately." Diana kept her voice level, professional. "We are two professionals at work, Mr. Woodwork. Choose your next action carefully." "Don't do this," he pleaded, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. "Don't humiliate me like this." "I'm doing my job," she said simply. He reached for her wrist, fast, possessive, desperate. She pulled back, but not fast enough. His fingers closed around her arm. The floor captain materialized between them like a wall, his hand firm on Martin's shoulder. "Sir, step back." The dining room went silent. Every head turned. 50 pairs of eyes witnessed the moment. The man trying to grab, the woman pulling away, the staff protecting one of their own. Colette appeared from the kitchen, her expression glacially calm. She addressed Martins with the kind of politeness that cuts deeper than shouting ever could. "Sir, you're disrupting service. This is your warning. Return to your table, settle your bill, and leave quietly, or I will have you removed. Do you understand?" Martin's face went red, then white. He released Diana's arm and stumbled backward. "I understand," he mumbled. 5 minutes later, Diana approached table 6 one final time. The check presenter sat on her tray. Black leather, discreet, final. She set it down between the empty wine glasses with the same care she'd shown all evening. "Whenever you're ready," she said softly. Martins opened it with trembling hands. Inside was the bill, $347, and beneath it, a small, folded card in Diana's handwriting. He unfolded it slowly. "You are not my emergency anymore." The words blurred in his vision. When he looked up, Diana was already walking away, moving toward the kitchen with her head high and her steps sure. The pendant lights above table 6 flickered once, then dimmed. The evening was ending, but only for him. Diana moved through her closing sequence like a conductor finishing a symphony. Table by table, she swept crumbs with a silver brush, refreshed water glasses, offered espresso with quiet efficiency. At table 12, she poured a perfect double shot for the health inspector, the crema golden and intact. He nodded his approval. Exceptional evening. At table 6, Martin still held the folded card, reading the same 7 words over and over. "You are not my emergency anymore." His hands shook. The letters blurred. He felt the weight of the room pressing against him. Not hostile, just indifferent. He'd become irrelevant in his own crisis. Phones around the dining room began to buzz softly. The blogger's follow-up post had gone live. Update. The wife isn't crying, she's working. With grace, with skill. With a business plan that puts his real estate deals to shame. This is what dignity looks like. Lambros arrives. Evelyn Woodwork. The energy in the room shifted. The whispers turned from scandal to admiration. 2 women at table 9 raised their wine glasses in Diana's direction. A man near the window mouthed, "Respect." The front door opened, bringing a gust of cold air. Josephine stepped back inside, her coat buttoned, her face composed. She walked directly to table 6. "I'm done, Martins," she said clearly. Not angry, not sad, just finished. He looked up, desperate. "Josephine, please, I'm paying for my own meal." She pulled cash from her wallet and placed it on the table. Exact change, calculated down to the tip. "I hope you figure out what you're actually looking for, but I won't be part of it anymore." She turned and walked out without looking back. Colette appeared at Diana's side near the espresso machine, 2 small brass keys in her palm. "These are for you," she said warmly. "After hours access to Lambros and the key to the back room. 6 weeks to build your Tuesday Supper Club pilot. My kitchen is your kitchen." Diana's eyes burned, but she smiled. "Thank you, Colette. I won't let you down." "You couldn't, if you tried." The donor couple approached, the woman extending a business card. "We'd like to discuss seed funding. $5,000 to start, more if the model works." "It will work," her husband added, shaking Diana's hand firmly. Diana tucked the card into her apron pocket alongside her order pad. 2 futures folded together. Martin stood abruptly, his chair scraping loud enough to turn heads. He crossed the dining room toward Diana, his voice cracking with desperation. "Diana, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Let me say it. Publicly. Let everyone hear." Diana turned slowly, her expression calm but immovable. "Not here. Not tonight." She gestured toward his table. "Please settle your bill, Mr. Woodwork." The formality of her words, "Mr. Woodwork," landed like a door closing. He tried once more, reaching for her hand. "I made a mistake. I can fix this." "There's nothing to fix," she said softly. "There's only what comes next, and you're not part of that." Martin stood frozen as she walked back to the kitchen, her steps steady, her head high. The health inspector approached Colette near the bar, his report folder tucked under his arm. "Outstanding establishment," he said. "But I want to note something specific." He nodded toward Diana. "Section B. Exemplary professionalism under extraordinary circumstances. It's rare to see that level of composure. You should be proud of your staff." Colette smiled. "I am." Service ended at 10:47 p.m. The last diners trickled out. Servers gathered around the espresso machine for the nightly debrief, their voices low and tired but satisfied. Diana untied her apron, folding it carefully. She counted her tips, $230, and slipped them into an envelope. She reached for the thin chain around her neck, the one that held her wedding band, and tucked it back beneath her collar. Not yet, but soon. The floor captain squeezed her shoulder. "You were incredible tonight, Evelyn." "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." She collected her tote, slipped the brass keys into the side pocket, and stepped through the back door into the alley. The string lights still glowed. The city hummed with late-night life, cabs honking, music drifting from open windows, voices calling goodbyes. From the sidewalk across the street, Martin stood with his hands in his pockets, watching through Lambrose's windows. Inside, a server wiped down the last tables. The pendant lights dimmed one by one, and there, near the bar, Colette handed Diana a folder, menus, maybe, or contracts, and embraced her like a mother. He watched the woman he'd tried to shrink into an accessory receive keys to a door he could never walk through. He'd had everything, her loyalty, her patience, her love, and he'd traded it for spectacle and secrecy. Now he had neither. Diana emerged from the front entrance, her tote over her shoulder, her steps light despite the long shift. She didn't look back at the restaurant. She didn't search the sidewalk for him. She walked toward the subway entrance, the stairs glowing under fluorescent light, and descended into the belly of the city. Above her, a sign flickered in the window of a vacant storefront, "For Lee's." But in 6 weeks, there would be another sign. Hand-painted, elegant. Hers, Evelyn's, Tuesday suppers, all welcome. The night subway roared. Diana stepped aboard. Somewhere ahead, a kitchen waited. A name waited. A future waited. And for the first time in years, she wasn't building it for someone else. She was building it for herself.